Indeed, from the high desert, stretching in the west from the Tahitian and Hawaiian island chains, eastward to the Caribbean, northward to the North Pole, south all the way into South America and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM. And let me tell you, referring to my newest affiliate, WABC in New York, I did a interview on their morning show, well, at the end of last week, I think, at the end of the final day of broadcast on WABC. And one of the morning personalities asked me what my view, my opinion of Flight 800 was, and I said, I think it was a missile that exploded adjacent to Flight 800, and I think it was a terrorist. And of course that flies in the face of what we're being told by the FBI, the CIA, and I would imagine the NTSB as well. To bring you up to date and to remind you, on July 17th of 1996, TWA Flight 800 bound for Paris blew up off the coast of Long Island shortly after takeoff from Kennedy International Airport, killing all 230 people on board. Witnesses described a huge fireball in the sky. July 18th, the FBI takes lead in the investigation. President Clinton warned the American public against jumping to any conclusions. Investigators study the bomb, missile, or mechanical malfunction theory as causes. July 25th, divers recover the plane's so-called black boxes. Neither one yields any quick answers to the cause. August 30th, traces of RDX, a key ingredient in a plastic explosive used to blow up Pan Am Flight 103 in 1988, are found on wreckage. Investigators later suspect the material got onto the plane during training of bomb-sniffing dogs. On September 16th of 1996, James Kellstrom headed the probe for the FBI, calls rumors that the plane was felled by a U.S. missile outrageous. October 15th, a Boeing engineer says the center fuel tank, the focus of the probe, was designed to leave no chance that an electrical spark could cause an explosion there. November 2nd, Navy divers completed 15 weeks of terrible work, hard work, saying they had pulled up all the wreckage they could find. Fishing trawlers began scraping the ocean floor then for wreckage 2 days later. December 4th, TWA stages funeral for unidentified members of Flight 800. Now, 1997, February 8th, victims' families tour the wreckage at Long Island Hangar, placing roses on the seats where their loved ones sat. April 29th, trawling for wreckage halted after nearly 6 months. June 9th, investigators tell victims' families that the investigation is now in the final phase, with no evidence found of a criminal or terrorist act. A preliminary report from the National Transportation Safety Board blames that disaster on a center fuel tank explosion cause unknown, but suspected mechanical source. November 12th. A victim's father tells the Associated Press he's received a letter from the FBI that says the agency has found absolutely no evidence of a crime and is now suspending its probe into the disaster. And that is the rough chronology of Flight 800. I should add, I suppose, one more point. About a week ago, the CIA released a graphic kind of cartoon image of what they thought occurred with Flight 800. It was aired by the American media, generally, for about 1 day, and then more or less not seen again. Tonight, I have an aviation expert with us who is going to talk to us about Flight 800. He is William, or Bill Donaldson, and he has a significant history and is well qualified to speak on this subject. He has been an A4, long military record, of course, an A4 attack pilot line division officer. He has been an advanced jet flight instructor, line division officer. He has been an assistant air operations, CCA officer. He has been a A4 US-2 pilot maintenance officer. He has been an A6 attack pilot safety officer. He has been an air operations officer. He has been a safety officer. He has been a nuclear plans officer, a chief of staff officer, a military expert who has made a presentation to the Presidential Base Closure Commission. In other words, he's got nothing but aviation history with him. We are going to talk to him about the details of what did occur on Flight 800. We also have two witnesses to what occurred on Long Island that terrible night. They would be Major Fred Myers, an attorney on Long Island who recently retired from the Air National Guard, who has extensive military pilot history, was active duty Navy helicopter pilot, holds the Distinguished Flying Cross for pilot rescues under fire in North Vietnam. That's North Vietnam. He is a witness to what occurred that night. We have Richard Goss with us. He owns a fine woodworking business on Long Island, had some private pilot experience, is an avid radio control airplane model flyer, has very sharp eyesight and very special spatial awareness, which you must have to fly a model. Richard is a non-drinker. He was sitting on the West Hampton Yacht Squadron's patio looking across Mauritius Bay to the Barrier Island, and he saw what he thought was a large firework launched from inland, or from the island, climbing straight up, traveling straight out to sea, leveling off, and then making a hard left turn just before it exploded. So, we have an aviation expert, we have two witnesses, and tonight you may hear the untold story of Flight 800. Let us first now go to William or Bill Donaldson. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Art. Glad to be on with you this evening.
Happy to have you. And we've got a lot to talk to you about, Mr. Donaldson. I skipped over your resume and did not include a very great deal of the detail of some of the jobs you've had, but basically since about 1958, you've been in aviation one way or the other.
Oh yeah, in fact, I'm an Air Force brat. My father, I grew up with Air Force fighter pilots before I ever even joined the Navy. So probably 50 years of my life has been pretty totally immersed in tactical aviation.
Okay, we're going to have a lot of detail from you about the Flight 800 business, but I think we should lead the show with two people who actually saw what happened. And I've got them on the line, and I'm going to see if we can bring them up right now. They are Richard Goss and Major Fred Myers. Major Myers, are you there? Hello, Major Myers. Okay, I can barely hear you for some reason. Richard Goss, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay, we appear to have a problem.
Maybe not. How's that?
Oh, much better. Much better. Is that Major Myers?
Yes, sir.
What happened?
I just had two phones on the same line.
Oh, I see. No, you can't do that. All right, very good. What I think I would like to do, Mr. Donaldson, is to let you ask these gentlemen what they saw.
Okay. That's probably, that'll work pretty well. Fred Myers and I are sort of kindred spirits because we were in Vietnam at about the same time. Fred, why don't you go ahead and just go through what you were doing and what you saw, and we'll go from there.
All right. Interrupt me if if I get too verbose. I was up on a routine evening training flight, actually just completing these a series of mandatory monthly requirements, waiting for the sun to go down before we flew a night vision goggle air refueling mission, lights out air refueling.
What were you flying?
I was flying an H-60 Black Hawk helicopter, and
Okay.
I was scanning the area in the front of and to the right of the aircraft because my co-pilot was flying an instrument approach, and he was heads down in the cockpit. In other words, his concentration, his eyes were on the gauges. He wasn't looking out for possible traffic that would collide with us. And we were at near the end of the glide slope on this instrument approach when the tower called out, giving another aircraft clearance to land on my runway. So I immediately looked out in front of me to see where that traffic was. I couldn't see it, but as I was scanning the horizon, looking for this traffic, I saw a streak of light, which I've described many times, and I've described it as being similar in speed and trajectory of a shooting star, except that it was broad daylight and the streak was red-orange in color. But it was moving from my left center to my further left. It was almost horizontal, but had a gently descending curve.
Major, you rescued people in North Vietnam. You've seen missiles.
Yes, sir.
You know what missiles look like.
Yes, sir.
Is that what this looked like?
It could have been, but nothing at the moment in my head clicked and said this is missile, for a couple of reasons. Certainly I wasn't looking for a missile.
Obviously, yes.
And number two, the missiles I'd seen fired in Vietnam normally had erratic flight paths. They don't describe, or did not describe, a smooth arc in the air.
Right. Now, Fred, to butt in a little bit, that's true. Most smaller anti-aircraft missiles are very erratic in flight, and it's something that every combat pilot would recognize. But we should realize that there are many missiles in various inventories that have rock-solid trajectories, and Fred may not have seen one of those in flight.
Well, I had seen SAM-1s, and they were pretty old logs, telephone pole type runs. Yeah. But there was nothing about this that was unique and said to be, this is a missile. So I can't make that determination that it absolutely was a missile, because it could have been a number of other things.
All right, Major, where were you specifically in the air in this Black Hawk when you saw this? Where were you?
All right, I was 200 feet in the air on the northeast end of a runway that faces southwest. So I was looking right straight down the runway and over the extended center line of the runway, right at this streak of light. It was right in front of me. It was at a good distance, somewhere between 10 and 15 miles, and probably, I had estimated at the time, somewhere around 10,000 feet, although it's very difficult to estimate altitude at that distance. The streak of light lasted for 3 to 5 seconds. Then it stopped for somewhere around a second, and then immediately to my left, at the end of what would have been the trajectory of that same streak of light, and at that speed, in other words, so that I made a conclusion that what I saw had come from the streak of light. Although the streak of light had stopped, then just about a second later, further to the left and on approximately the same line, I saw an explosion, high-velocity explosion. Looked for all the world to me like ordnance, like a warhead.
Like a warhead. In other words, this would not have been the main body explosion of the fuel tank of Flight 800. This would have been a sharp ordnance-type explosion.
That's exactly correct.
All right, you were in a Black Hawk, Major. I was just up in Alaska and was in a Black Hawk, and I'm aware of particularly the rescue types equipment. You have a lot of heat-sensing equipment on board, as well as radar and so forth. Were you able to detect anything on instruments?
No. Now, we didn't have the... we have forward-looking infrared radar, which is a heat-seeking depicting equipment. We did not have it energized at the time. It's normal to wait until after sunset to energize that equipment.
Sure.
And it has a cool-down period. We also have night vision goggles, which we have attached to our helmets, but we have them flipped up above the helmet so that they're not impeding our vision.
Understood. And
they were off. So at this point, we're strictly what do we call them, Mark 1 eyeball. We're flying on our normal vision in broad daylight on a beautiful evening with practically no clouds in the sky, just a very slight haze or scud layer that was more visible lower down than it was at 200 feet. At 200 feet, the visibility was excellent.
Major, the CIA and the FBI have suggested that what people thought they saw and what they thought, they're calling a missile, people like you, Major, who should know what you see, in fact, didn't see that at all. What they saw was fuel trailing from Flight 800 that appeared to be a streak of light. Can you address that?
Well, that's pure fabrication. What these
really?
What's going on in the FBI, I don't know. But after the event, I talked to several people whom I've known for 10 or 15 years, who are early middle age, 40s and 50s, good eyesight, highly reputable people, professional people, who told me that they had, by accident, seen something, and they had seen what they described, being civilians, they described it as a Roman candle or a rocket going up from the horizon, and there's no doubt in their mind that it was going up and not coming down. None.
And Art, this is Bill here, the critical point here in an investigation is that when Richard comes on here shortly, what he saw and what Fred Meyer saw, when you draw the line on the bearing line, they cross about 3 miles offshore, and they cross-correlate with other people up and down the beach. So the first sight of what appears to have been a missile, there are a whole lot of people that don't know each other at all that point to exactly the same place in the sky, and it was well inland of the track of the aircraft.
Major, were you interviewed by the FBI?
I was. This happened on a Wednesday evening.
Yes.
And on a Friday afternoon, I sought them out at the East Mauritius Coast Guard Station.
Oh, you actually went to them. Major, hold on. Everybody hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour, and we'll pick up on that point when we come back tonight. Flight 800, as Paul would say, the rest of the story. This is Coast to Coast AM. All right, we're talking about Flight 800. And we have with us right now Major Fred Myers. Major Myers was in a Black Hawk helicopter at about 200 feet when he saw a streak of light and then what he describes as an ordnance explosion at an estimated 10,000 feet altitude. Now, again, an ordnance explosion means a weapon exploding, not a center fuel tank exploding. Everybody's back on the air again. Major, I asked you, did the FBI interview you, and you said you went to them.
That's correct. I sought the FBI out on 2 occasions. They never came to me. And on the Friday after the accident, which would have been the 19th of July, 96, I went to the FBI trailer at the East Mauritius Coast Guard Station.
Yes, sir.
Knocked on the door, told them who I was, and asked them if they would like to take a statement from me. They seemed surprised, sort of caught off guard. They assigned 2 agents. I sat down in a room. One of the agents pulled out a little 2.5 by 4-inch spiral notebook out of his back pocket and a pen. And I spoke to them for approximately 4 minutes. They asked no questions. He took a couple of notes, and they said thank you very much, and I left.
And Art, let me tell you something. He's not the only one that happened to. There's an inverted process here. If you didn't see anything, they wanted to talk to you. If you saw something very specific, they didn't seem to be too interested.
Well, we'll get into that later. Major Myers, you said you went to them twice, so you did not hear back from them. I take it at some point you said, what the hell's going on? Went back again? Is that?
Well, actually, there was a meeting approximately 2 weeks later. My co-pilot was very dissatisfied with the fact that the FBI had not interviewed anybody in the crew and had not taken any of the actions that he thought were appropriate. Now, I'm not making any judgment on that, but he asked us to get together one more time, and we did. And during that meeting, I think that was also on a Friday, maybe it was just 1 week later.
Yeah.
I told the rest of the crew about a recurring dream I'd had, which concerned one portion of our flight that night when we were approaching the Fireball as it was already in the water. I had told Chris, who was at the controls, to slow the helicopter down to prevent us from flying under some debris that was still falling from the sky. Mm-hmm. And I had a picture in my mind's eye of that debris falling, and I saw that same picture over and over again, and it disturbed my sleep, kept me up for a week. Took about a week, and the dream worked its way out, and I could recognize what I was looking at in the dream. And I don't want to go into that, but at any rate, at that point, we called the FBI again, and I told them I had additional information that I thought would be helpful to them, and they sent 2 agents to the Public Affairs Office's house. The unit TAO lived in Santa Mauritius, right near the Coast Guard station. So they sent 2 agents up to talk to me. I talked to these 2 agents for about 15 or 20 minutes. They took notes, and they said thank you very much and left. That was the last interview I had one-on-one with anybody in the FBI. Sometime later, probably just about 2 weeks later, I gave a briefing to members of my own unit, the commanders of my own unit. There was an FBI agent present at that briefing. He asked no questions that I recall. 6 months later, I had my first and only interview with the NTSB, and there was an FBI agent present at that meeting. That lasted approximately 15 minutes, and he asked no questions then. And that's my total experience with the FBI.
Now, from the Kingdom of Nye, more Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Here again is Art.
Major, since you were flying a National Guard helicopter, would you have been aware of any military exercises, live fire military exercises, going on in the area?
Not necessarily.
All right.
Although it's a gray area. Now, we were scheduled to fly on an air refueling route. What this is a direct course and speed and altitude. They're all predetermined They're filed with the local air route traffic control of the Federal Aviation. They know that we're going to be flying approximately 2 miles south of the beach on a course parallel to the beach at an altitude, a preset altitude.
So in other words, had there been something going on, if they had not viewed it as a possible conflict to your flight plan, you might not have been notified?
Might not, because if it were happening if it were a Navy exercise in Whiskey 106, 10 miles south of the beach, and we're only planning to be 2 miles south of the beach, they probably would not have notified.
All right. Major, I think that we've got as much from you as we can have, except I just want to ask one more question. The most explosive, no pun intended, part of your testimony is that you saw a high explosive ordnance, a detonation. How certain are you that's what it was?
Look, I just looked back on 25 years experience in the air, and that's I can say that just give it the duck test. My old buddy John Sununu, if it looks like a duck, if it flies like a duck, it's probably a duck. And what I saw looked to me, for all the world, like an ordnance explosion. I don't know what else looks like that. And I might also comment that about 1.5 to 2 seconds after that ordnance explosion, there was a second high-velocity explosion of brilliant white light, like nothing I had recall having seen before or since. And then about 2 seconds or 3 seconds after that, there came the petrochemical explosion, which was the fuel burning.
And that would have been probably bright orange type.
Red orange, mottled color, a lot of black, a lot of mottled color, and grew to this huge fireball. But the point being, there were 2 high-velocity explosions before the fuel explosion.
Very clear. Major, I want to thank you. Bill, do you have anything else that we've missed that we should ask?
No, there's one point about that bright white light. Fred is not the only one that saw that, and that is a characteristic of high-velocity fragment penetration of aluminum. I'll give you a brilliant white flash, almost like a flash bulb. It's one of the collateral things that can happen with a warhead detonation.
Warhead. All right. Major, I want to thank you for being with us this evening, and I wish you luck, my friend.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, that is Major Fred Meyer. We'll now turn our attention to Richard Goss. Richard Goss, again, owns a business on Long Island. He is a witness to this event as well. Are you there, Richard?
Yes, sir.
All right. Please lead us through what you know and what you saw.
Yeah, that evening, I belonged to that West Hampton Yacht Squadron, and the West Hampton Yacht Squadron faces south. The back porch on it, and that particular Wednesday evening, we have an informal sunfish race, and that's followed by a porch dinner. And that dinner, you bring your own food, and you have a little barbecue in the back, and then we gather there on the back porch, and it faces Moriches Bay and the Barrier Beach Dune Road.
Yes, sir.
And we had just finished up our Wednesday race. I raced in that particular race, and we finished stowing our boats and putting our sails away, and I had just walked up onto the back porch and sat down at the table that some of my friends were at. And, I was looking out over the bay, just relaxing from, just this mild race we were having. It was a beautiful evening, very clear, light wind, light to moderate wind. And, just happened to look out over the bay, and there was, a little conversation. And then, out of the corner of my eye came I saw like a flare coming up, toward the Barrier Beach area.
Now, is there any doubt at all about whether what you saw was going up or down?
Oh, it was definitely going up.
It was definitely going up.
Definitely going up.
And it looked like a flare going up.
It looked like a flare, and then, it drew attention to a couple other people, and they said, someone even mentioned, hey, look at the firework, and we all thought it was a firework, at least I did. Now I'm just pleasantly watching this bright, red, pink, flare.
All right. Could you see, Richard, anything beyond the light itself? In other words, could you make out any substance to anything at all beyond the light?
No, it was so bright, and it was the typical look of a firework.
Okay.
I mean, going up.
We all know what they look like. All right.
And that light travels quite high up before it reaches its peak, and that's exactly what I saw. And then as it reached its peak, it sort of leveled out. And then the strangest part was it took a sharp veer left. And it was horizontal. It moved horizontal at that point. And it was only a second or two later that I saw the massive, explosion in the sky.
All right, again, Richard, the CIA and others have said that witnesses like yourself, who saw things like you're describing to us right now, were in fact seeing fuel trailing from the explosion of Flight 800, and that in fact it was not going up, it was going down, and it was an optical illusion. What do you say? What do you say?
One hell of an optical illusion. I can't see that possible at all. I mean, it was...
All right. Let me try this out. You saw this thing rising, this light, which you thought was a flare, and it rose to a great altitude, and then you said took a turn. Now, a flare might go up, and then in a trajectory might begin down again. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about a horizontal turn that you saw. Is that correct?
Definitely.
And Richard, you might give them a feeling of how fast this thing was moving. Moving up quickly, or did it appear to be going away from you?
Oh yeah, it was very very fast, and faster than a firework climbing. And then I could see that when it reached its peak, it was definitely traveling away. The flare was getting smaller, and then it took the sharp left, and you could see the smoke trail, sharp left.
And you could see a smoke trail.
And then there wasn't the explosion.
Then an explosion. Did you see? You heard the major describe what he firmly concludes is a high ordnance explosion, not the kind of explosion that followed with the center fuel tank or the fuel tanks exploding, the fuel in Flight 800 exploding, which is like a fireball. Mm-hmm. When you say you saw an explosion, what did you see precisely?
I saw the large fireball at that point, and then about a second after that, there was a second explosion off to the side, off to the left side. As that fireball started to come down, the original fireball, there was a second explosion.
Bill, even if we were to buy into the explanation that it was trailing fuel that was on fire, is there any way you could imagine that the trailing fuel would have taken a sharp left-hand turn?
Oh, no. It's what Richard describes is the perfect layman's description of a missile engagement. When I talked to him out there, we went out to the yacht club, and I took bearing lines, precise bearing lines from his position. I even photographed that site later. And when I crossed it to these other people up and down 11 miles of beach, they all saw essentially the same thing. They saw something going vertically rapidly and then appear to level, go outbound, And Richard's probably the closest one of the witnesses I've talked to the actual launch, because it looks like, even though he thought it went from the barrier island as a fireworks, it probably was a missile about another 3 nautical miles offshore, and a much bigger vehicle than a flare or a fireworks. And I've got lots of stuff we can talk to later.
Of course, yes, of course. Richard, did you go to the FBI?
They came to me.
They came to you?
Yes.
And what was the nature of the interrogation or the investigation? What did they ask you? What did you perceive of their attitude?
Their attitude, when there were two agents that interviewed me, their attitude was they were very surprised at the viewpoint that I had, and they were very excited about what I had seen initially. And this was the first time I've heard Mr. Myers, and he was describing the notepad, the small notepad.
Yes.
Out of the back pocket, and that's exactly what they used, and all they used was that same type of notepad and pen. And they jotted down a few things, and the interview was 4 or 5 minutes.
4 or 5 minutes.
And they, one peeled off, and he was speaking on a cellular phone in the background, and that was about it.
Was that the only interview the FBI held with you, or did they come back?
They came back a second time.
And then?
Very little excitement this time. It was just sort of a follow-up, and they looked.
So something, it was like something had changed?
It was definitely like something had changed, and I just couldn't believe it, and that was it. It was no excitement, no anything after that. And then a third time they had called me on my cell phone in my truck and given me a over-the-phone interview, and that was it.
Would you characterize their investigation as one that initially the agents were very interested in, and then in the both follow-ups you've described, they suddenly had, comparatively, a great disinterest in what you had to say?
A disinterest, and yeah, I would say that would be accurate.
You're not a drinker?
No, sir.
You don't take drugs?
No, sir.
You're sure of what you saw?
Absolutely.
When you saw the CIA's description of what occurred and you heard the conclusion of mechanical failure on Flight 800, how did that hit you? Best described, looked down at the ground and shook my head. I couldn't believe it. And the cartoon of the CIA cartoon.
Yeah, the CIA cartoon of that best describes it as a cartoon, and it was a joke.
That isn't what happened.
No.
Richard, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We are going to proceed as a matter of fact, I think I just spent a longer period of time with you by several times than the FBI apparently spent with you.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you, and we will continue with Bill Donaldson after the break. Richard, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, that's Richard Goss, and when we come back, we will get into the technical details of what Bill Donaldson thinks occurred on Flight 800. So I suggest you stay with me if you want to hear the other side of the story of that tragedy. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM.
with Art Bell from west of the Rockies, including Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. Dial 1-800-618-8255. That's 1-800-618-8255. Now again, here's Art.
Once again, good morning. We're dealing tonight with the Flight 800 disaster or criminal act. You determine that for yourself. In this last hour, we heard from Major Fred Meyer, who personally witnessed what he describes as a high explosive ordnance detonation, a streak of light, and then a high ordnance detonation. He viewed this from a Black Hawk helicopter about 200 feet in the air. So he is a witness to what occurred. Now, that doesn't sound like an overheated fuel tank exploding to me. It sounds like a witness, a well-experienced, who has seen missiles, rescued pilots in North Vietnam, and saw all this from his Black Hawk. Then we heard from Richard Goss, a Long Island resident, well-trained, who also saw something rise from the ground without question to a high altitude, take a sharp left-hand turn. Then he too saw an explosion. Two eyewitnesses to what occurred